Hi everyone, I'm Bud with Bud's Hot Sports Takes, coming back at you again. You'll be definitely seeing more since football is just so huge. Uh, it's always a hot topic. So football season, we're probably going to be doing a video definitely every week. Coming for that because again, it's just so huge, so talked about, so watched. Uh, and then of course, since predominantly uh, people play a lot of daily fantasy sports when it comes to it. We'll be doing quite a bit, and we'll be doing an episode per week during the football season. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the top five in different categories. Passing, rushing, receiving. Then what we're going to end up doing is after we do that, then we'll actually do what I think are going to be smart picks for people to probably do as far as daily fantasy sports picks for the week. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump right on into this. So week one NFL passing leaders, Tua Tagovailoa with 338 passing yards. He had one TD, three sacks, and 101 QB rating. Matthew Stafford, 317 yards, one TD, he threw two interceptions, and he had a 85.2 QB rating. Patrick Mahomes passed for 291 yards, one interception, two sacks, and had a QB rating of 101.9. Baker Mayfield passed for 289 yards. He had four touchdowns, was only sacked one time, and had a QB rating of 146.4. Jalen Hurts, he passed for 278 yards. He had two TDs. He also had two interceptions and a QB rating of 80.3. All right, our rushing leaders was Joe Mixon with 159 yards and one TD. Jordan Mason, he had 147 yards, one TD. You're definitely going to want to keep an eye on Christian McCaffrey because whenever he's back, definitely Jordan Mason, he's going to fall off big time because he's not going to get used nowhere near as much. Because Christian McCaffrey is Christian McCaffrey. J.K. Dobbins, he had 135 yards, one TD. Lamar Jackson had 122 yards and one fumble. Obviously, doesn't help you decide on a running back, there. So we'll add a sixth. And also the reason why I have said you definitely want to stay away from, King Derrick Henry, right? This year. Because Jackson, he takes off way too much. So he's going to be stealing a lot of touches, from Henry, as well as the thing that makes, Henry as good as Henry is he's that old school, power back style. He's got that big muscular body and gets plenty of touches, and he's hurting your front by the end of the game. They're tired, they're hurt, they're beat up. So then when it comes late in the game, he's getting huge gains because the defensive backs really too small in order to go ahead and really tackle a guy. So he just shoves on the side. Um, so yeah, and I don't think we're going to really see much of that. A lot of big touches, coming Henry's way. Who getting Derrick Henry is going to benefit the most is going to be Lamar Jackson on his run game, as evident by rushing leaders. You got a quarterback who's in fourth right now in leaders. Ramondre Stevenson, 120 yards, 1 TD. Saquon Barkley with 109 yards and 2 TDs. Receiving leaders is you have Jaden Reed. He had 4 receptions, 138 yards, and 1 TD. Tyreek Hill, 7 receptions, 130 yards, 1 TD. Alec Pierce, 3 receptions, 125 yards, 1 TD. Jameson Williams, 5 receptions, 121 yards, 1 touchdown. A.J. Brown, 5 receptions, 119 yards, and 1 TD. Now, my choices for you guys to look for, when picking people this week, now we're going to get into like those DFS picks that I was talking about. And in just one sec, we're going to pause real quick. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that, guys. So as I said, we're going to get into our DFS picks now. So we're going to start with wide receiver. So my wide receiver option suggestions: Cooper Kupp, and hope he doesn't get injured. That's what he's prone to. He's prone to injury, right? And the guy gets hurt all the time. He's only had one year where he didn't get hurt, and was definitely by far the biggest career he's ever had, and he set records, right? But when he's healthy and he's on the field, the best wide receiver, if not definitely he's one of the best, wide receivers, in the game. I'm not gonna say of all time, but in the game. So of the receivers of today. So anyway, you're gonna hope he doesn't get injured, because that's what he's prone to. But another thing he is prone to is he gets a lot of targets and he gets a lot of receptions every game, and with that comes yards as well. And in systems, you score points, for receptions as well, right? And those DFSs, yeah, so not only is he going to be getting a lot of receptions, those receptions are also points. Rashee Rice, towards the end of the season last year, they figured out he has the hands to be a possession type receiver for them. And then he was averaging between 7 and 9 receptions a game at the end of the season. And in week 1, he had 7 receptions on 9 targets, so pretty in line with that. He also had 103 yards, and let's face it, the Chiefs' offense didn't even look that good and comfortable most of the game in week 1. That's just honesty. They looked a little lost and out of place most of the game. I'm not going to say they didn't have their moments, because they did. So that dependability, out of him is a good sign for them to rely on him even more while they have him. Again, they're definitely not going to have him all season, because NFL isn't disciplining him until after. So after what's going on in the courts, the courts finish what they're gonna be doing, to him. So then the NFL will punish him. So because of that, they're gonna have him most of the season at least. So while they have him, it's he has that dependability that they can rely on. So expect the same thing for how he was used towards the end of the season last year, as well as as evident of week 1 and how he was used here, to continue, if not maybe even grow. Then Garrett Wilson. I know 6 receptions on 11 targets doesn't look like a good start, but more reps on the field between him and Aaron Rodgers, the better the combo is going to be. And even though he caught a tad over half, that's still a lot of volume to get used to each other. I was still 11 targets, right? Well, it's 11 times thrown his way. That's volume. A lot of times volume equals production. Not when you're only catching around half, but I expect that to go up too, right? But anyway, what that also shows is that a lot of balls are going to go his way, right? And we have seen the kid that he can certainly produce. We've seen him. Was it like 3 years now? And every year he has looked really good. He's looked like a wide receiver one should, right? He's been dependable, um, and he's looked elite. And now he should have the best quarterback he's ever had. Aaron Rodgers. But it also does take some time for guys to get used to each other. I know, and I also know that all you might be saying, but Lazard, he had the same amount of catches, but he also had more yards and he had 2 TDs. Why not go there? Again, more balls still went in the way of Garrett Wilson. More balls still went his direction. Also, Garrett Wilson is a better talent than Lazard. That's factual. So the difference in week one there is Rodgers and Lazard. They have history together. He's been his quarterback before, and he's been his quarterback for multiple years. So they have history and chemistry already. But as the season progresses, and everything, we're definitely going to be seeing the door swing big time in the other direction. That Wilson and Rodgers are going to get that chemistry. And then as their chemistry develops, again, that target is, the targets are also going to increase, as well as the reception completion percentage there is going to increase, because Rodgers, pretty accurate quarterback overall. And then my honorable mention here is Marvin Harrison Jr. I know what you're thinking. A debut with 1 reception on 3 targets for 4 yards isn't making anyone go, yeah, that's my guy. But here's some facts, okay? It was week one, and he didn't see a lot of balls go his way. But what he did have is he was open quite a bit, which is a good sign. It shows that he can outplay the defensive backs, the cornerbacks, at this level. He's This is his first year out of college. It's his first year in the NFL. And he was open quite a bit. He's outplaying, those elite level, cornerbacks. So that is a good sign. So more targets and trust from his quarterback, you know, uh, which will grow. So, okay, well, yeah. Well, let's review the game tape and game film, and he's open here, he's open there, he's open, he's open, he's open. Okay, well, we need to start throwing more his direction. I mean, he wasn't drafted where he was drafted because he can't play or because they don't have the organization doesn't have faith in him. But his quarterback still has to have faith, So some game review, showed him like, okay, yeah, I probably should have went that way more often. Yeah, and then we'll see him be that 100 plus reception, 1,000 yard plus rookie. We all thought he had the potential to be, as far as talent goes, especially with the lackluster of other options. With where he was going with the Arizona Cardinals, they don't have a wealth of options, right? They have a dependable running back, and that's about it, right? As far as that team goes. Uh, well, and a decent tight end. Zach Ertz. He's getting older, but he's dependable, right? But aside from that, you don't have anyone. So yeah, this guy should be your focus. Um, so I definitely expect you know more use, more targets, and a bigger week too. Definitely can't be a worse week too, unless he just yeah had zero receptions probably. Yeah, that would be worse. But 4 yards, one reception on three. That is going to be worse. But yeah, I expect some talking from the managers, from the owners and stuff like, hey, we drafted him for a reason. Make sure we're getting him involved in the game. So anyway, now my tight end suggestions. Even though Likely led the tight ends, receptions and yards, I have a hard time making him a suggestion, as Ravens like to utilize both Likely and Andrews. It was just Likely's night. So I'm not suggesting him. I don't like suggesting guys where a lot of times where teams rely heavily on multiple people at the position, especially when it's a position where usually one is on the field, or in this case, yeah, you can have two tight ends on the field, right? Um, but again, still, they're spreading it more, so it makes the chance that he's producing less, right? So yeah, just not going to make that suggestion. Well, the suggestion I am going to make was the guy that was second in tight end, Brock Bowers. He saw a lot of balls go his way. He had 6 reception of 8 targets for 58 yards. He was an early pick in round one of the draft, and the Raiders don't have a lot of options. They got Devontae Adams. There you go. That's their other options, right? Devontae Adams and running the ball. Yeah, that's about their options. So expect the 6 reception night to grow even more, or at least stay pretty steady. And given that tight ends get utilized a lot in key situations, makes them a pretty good choice, right? Tight ends get utilized a lot for if you're looking for that first down, because a lot of times they're a mixed match, with uh, athleticism uh, over the linebackers. Uh, they're too big for the cornerbacks, so they create a lot of mismatches. So they get utilized a lot for first downs, and they get utilized a lot when it comes to red zone touchdown opportunities, right? Um, and while first downs aren't going to score you extra points, obviously touchdowns will, right? Because every touchdown is going to be worth 6. And then our honorable mention is David Njoku. I know Watson, his quarterback looked terrible in week one, but but Njoku still finished almost the exact same line as last year's rookie standout tight end Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 45 yards. And then Njoku had 4 receptions on 5 targets for 44 yards. He had one less yard. And whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel, there is a big difference in what you pay for each between Sam Laporta and David Njoku. So it makes it worthwhile, to go with it, especially whenever he's producing pretty much at that same rate as the other guy. And then also, if you remember, last year with Joe Flacco, whenever Joe Flacco came in, he showed the initial faith that the Browns had in Njoku wasn't misplaced. They drafted him early, whenever they got him, and they thought he was going to be a big thing. He had a decent year, but other than that, He's been pretty relevant. Um, he's been good when utilized, but just really not used. But when Joe Flacco came in, he showed that, yeah, your faith in me was rightfully placed. Yeah, I have the ability to lead the team. So he does have that ability. So that's gonna be my honorable mention. Okay, my running back suggestions: Devon on Achani. Now, I know you heard me say like the reason I wasn't gonna be picking likely, even though he led the all tight ends last week, is because of usage between him and Andrews. Well, Achani and Mozart, they pretty much do a split role running back. But here's the thing, okay, uh, is the big playability of Achani is is the reason, right? He has that ability at any given play to break a huge run or catch and run and basically leave everybody in the dust, right? On any play, he has that ability to do so, um, and he done it pretty often. Last year. So I like picking the kid. Yeah, but anyway, so back to the other reasons, so the reasons like that I pre-listed here, okay, is I know he didn't have very many rushing yards in week one, but he was widely used in the passing game, and um, that again that was shown last year, except for he was also pretty utilized, in the running game, nowhere near as often as Mostert, but uh, they finished pretty much with the same amount of rushing yards, and Achini had fewer games, and Achini had more receiving yards. But anyway, um, you know, he had 7 receptions on 9 targets for 76 yards, which alone is 14.6, fantasy points, or 11.1 fantasy points, depending on whether it's DraftKings or FanDuel. DraftKings you get 1 point per reception, and in FanDuel you get a half a point per reception. Um, but still, either way, just in the receiving, so that's before even doing the rushing yards, over 10 points. And then, of course, if he scores a touchdown, that's tacking on 6 to that, right? And then, like I said, the dude breaks for a huge run or a huge, catch and run, done that pretty regularly last year. So, it's definitely not a bad pick to go with. And then Joe Mixon, yeah, that's a pretty good pick. Right now he's leading the NFL in Week 1 in rushing yards with 159 yards. He also had a TD. He had 30 receptions for 19 yards. I know that's not a lot of receptions or a lot of yards, but it does show that he's going to be utilized at least a little bit there. And then I was hesitant on Joe Mixon this year because of how Stroud he came on at the end of the last year, and then also when a guy goes to another team, you never know how he's going to be utilized. Joe Mixon, uh, you know, yeah, he was a 3 down back for a long time, in Cincinnati. Had a lot of talent. And that they stopped using him as much. And then finally, um, you know, he leaves, and he's at he's at the Texans this year. And you just don't ever really know, what a team is going to do when a guy comes over to their team, because chemistry is part of the game. Um, and then also, their game plan with Stroud coming on like he did at the end of the year. Maybe they want to do more passing, not much running. But they gave him 30 touches, and also he had 3 receptions. So it definitely looks like they're going to be giving him the chances to make an impact on the game. So they continue to give him, work him. Okay, we're going to give you your touches. We're going to get you your touches, and we are going to pass you the ball a little bit too. Um, you could be looking at huge points here, right? So yeah, Joe Mixon. My honorable mention is J.K. Dobbins. Sure, he only had 10 carries, had his 3 receptions, only went for 4 yards. So his receptions pretty much went nowhere. But he made those 10 touches count as he rushed for uh, I have 125, but I thought it was 135 yards. Let me check here. Yeah, it was 135. I thought so. Yeah. So we're gonna fix that on the paper there. Yeah, So yeah, those ten touches, and he rushed for 135 yards, and he even broke a run for 60 plus yards. He had a 61-yard run. He also had a touchdown. All of this is important because so many of their big key players, because he's with the Los Angeles Chargers. So many of their big key players, they left last year. They left after last year, right? Eckler, uh, Keenan, they left. So now this is a team that is going to be looking for an identity and for who's going to step up and be a playmaker. With showings like that, he's certainly going to be getting more opportunities this week because he's shown like, I got some playmaking ability. I can get things done for you. Give me the opportunity. So he's shown like, hey, I'm willing to step up. So that's my honorable mention. He may see a pretty good week. Quarterback suggestions. Even though he was fourth in yards, he certainly outplayed the rest of the quarterbacks in the NFL. In week 1, and is leading with the highest quarterback rating in the NFL right now. To prove it, right? Baker Mayfield. I would expect another good week from him coming up against the Lions. So that's my pick. That's who I think a lot of people should be going with this week on for QB. Now my honorable mention, Sam Darnold. I probably know with just mentioning Sam Darnold, a lot of people are like, what? But then look at how he played. You know, he's probably going to be much lower price than most of the other starting quarterbacks, again because he's gone to team after team after team. Been a starter or in a lot of teams QB2 and then QB1 got hurt and then he's QB1 or he's QB1 but just can't seem to stay put anywhere. Um, but guy has talent, but probably going to be able to get him pretty cheap because of that. They're DraftKings and FanDuel, they're going to undervalue him, um, so they're not going to. The price tag on him is probably going to be pretty low. But here's the thing: he passed for almost 80% for almost an 80% completion rate in week one. It was a 79.2 completion rate. So almost 80%. Yeah, he didn't put up many yards, and compared to Kirk Cousins' days, in the Vikings, it's understandable. When Cousins would throw, you know, when Cousins was on the Vikings, he would throw, like 40 times a game, um, you know, maybe a little over sometimes, but he'd throw around 40 times a game. Darnold threw for only 24 times. That's like 16 fewer times, right? In week one. Uh, but we also know the Vikings have a lot of talent to make things happen on offense. They got two great wide receivers. They got a great tight end. They got good running. So they got a lot of options there. On offense. So you know big things can happen there. So look for this week. You can look for him to be a steal in week two. To also be able to get you some decent points, for the quarterback position at a lower cost. And then that's going to, of course, give you more money to spend in other places like, wide receivers and running backs, tight ends, or your flex. Defense suggestions. Dallas Cowboys. They look great, and yeah, and before you even start, I'm not one of those. Them boys, them my boy. No, not a Cowboys fan. But defense wise, Dallas Cowboys, they looked great. Defensive wise, they had a few sacks and interceptions in week one. Good signs for a strong defense and one that will net you some points. So that's my pick. Now my honorable mention is the Steelers. They had a bunch of flags that reversed a lot of strong, good defensive plays that would have got you points. They had flags that interrupted, interceptions, flags that interrupted sack, fumble, recoveries, right? Um, and then offense side, they had flags that negated big gains there too. But yeah, the flags hurt them. But even with those flags, they were still able to keep Kirk Cousins off his game, and had him put up one of the worst performances in his career. Not an easy thing to do, even whenever you don't have flags, because one of Kirk Cousins' big things is how dependable he is. Right? Week after week, year after year, he puts up about the same numbers all the time. Um, which is why he was dominating everybody before he went down last year. Because last year it was, a, a very unorthodox year. A lot of the top guys had worst years of their careers. Um, it was a very weird year last year. But that's why dependability matters. But yeah, they were able to keep him looking uneasy and play one of the worst games of his career. So that might be another good defensive pickup. Cowboys or Steelers. Probably either one would be good choices for the defense. For my flex suggestions, look at my honorable mentions, except for QB and defense. obviously. Let's super flex. You could pick up a QB. Super flex. I wouldn't go with two defenses, just because. Well, defenses usually don't score you a lot of points, though. Sometimes, yeah, they score more than uh, get you more points than position players, but that's the exception, not the rule. Normally that's your worst spot. Whenever it comes to getting points, but it's also why it's one of the cheapest spots. So, if it is super flat, don't pick a second defense. Yeah, maybe a second quarterback if you want. That's fine. Go with Darnold and go with Baker Mayfield. But anyway, those are my suggestions for everybody. Uh, look forward to hearing from you guys. Feel free to like, dislike, comment. You know, you you can do subscribe. You can do all that thing below. So feel free, and tune in for next week, guys. Thank you.